Hello. So today, what I want to do, I saw an article where it said that Saudi Arabia was going to be hosting a peace summit with Ukraine, and that Putin and Russia, of course, would be excluded from it. And it kind of prompted me to really kind of revisit some things. And so what I would like to do with everyone out there is I'm going to share some facts. I'm going to be sharing some historical facts as we know them and have been presented to us. And then just asking for people to put the dots together. Now, anybody who knows about me, knows about my past, part of one of the things that I had done in my previous life was I had the opportunity to go to a criminal intelligence and link analysis course. And it's just about putting dots together, right? And so I want to offer some dots to people out there, some facts, and say, hey, let's see what you can glean from it. Because the way I look at it, we're all in this together. I'm not looking about being right, but finding that common truth. Okay, so let's look at some of these facts. Number one, we got Saudi Arabia wanting to host a peace summit with Ukraine. Okay, you have Putin, who is being left out of it. Now, Putin, going back, pledged his allegiance to Xi Jinping of the CCP. This is a video. You can see this. Now, whether Putin is playing good guy, bad guy, is really aligning with him or not, I don't know, but we'll get into some other things about that. Xi Jinping was called His Excellency by Klaus Schwab, who is pretty much the founder of the World Economic Forum. You have the World Economic Forum Tech Expo being held in Dubai. Dubai, of course, having renewed relationships with Saudi Arabia and even now renewed relationships with Iran, which is a pretty big deal when you consider a lot of their prophecy are based upon the Mahdi that will unite the Shia and Sunni. And so you have a lot of things going on with the Islamic kingdoms and the dragon to the east, China. The Saudis in the past, okay, if you look into the Saudi history, part of the way in which the House of Saud was built was the use, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a religious order called the Ikhwan, who the king had aligned with at that time, who were really hardcore fundamentalist Islamists. They were the jihad all the way, that he used to go in and conquer the area. And then once they were in power, he ended up doing some backdoor deals and ended up eliminating them, leaving himself in power. Now, the reason I bring this up is because throughout history, religion has been used as a tool to gain support, to get followers. Remember, it was in World War II that Hitler used not only the nationalistic, but the religious side, the spiritual side, right? Where they were going to be the supreme race. The white Aryan gods were going to come in and dominate everything, and appeal to the pains that the people were going through, in particular economically and socially, following World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, everything that was placed on them and reparations. You had issues with different bankers and Jewish bankers, and all these pains were exploited. And by the way, Hitler was also being influenced, and there was a society called the Fuel Society. They were an occult society. But a lot of their leadership in the SS, they weren't blonde hair and blue-eyed, but yet they were able to convince an entire nation that the blonde hair and blue-eyed were the superior ones that were going to take over the world, appealing to their nationalistic and religious prides and prejudices and exploiting their wounds. Does this sound familiar? throughout history, we have all types of crusades, all types of, if we're looking at what's going on in Russia, where Putin was appealing to the religious minded their patriarch Kirill, coming out and saying to die in Ukraine would be an honor, fighting against the evil LGBT agenda, and how they have packaged that with the Satanist agenda, excluding all of the psyops and all of the emotional wounds and all of the reasons why that movement exists as it does, which has nothing to do with being gay or how somebody wants to dress or two-spirit, or that's what an indigenous First Nation would refer to being gay, or a cross-dresser, if you will, which is, that's a whole different subject. It's not what those who would exploit the religions paint it as. But point being is that the religions have been used for a long time by elite who are not religious themselves per se, but use it as a tool to shape society. This is why you would have the communist China, who are like no religion, aligning with so many kingdoms and throughout the world that seem to be hardline fundamentalist adherents to the Quran. Now, following World War II, you have Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip took different scientists following the fall of Germany, Nazi SS scientists, and distributed them between Russia and America. Following this time frame too, or actually I think it was right after, is when, let me back up. So under the Nazi scientists, remember, they were doing all type of psychological and biological experiments on human beings, in particular on Jewish people at the time. You have, following that Operation Paperclip, a lot of these scientists in thought being distributed between Russia and China, or Russia and America. Around this time frame too, then suddenly we have the crashed UFOs in Roswell incident. Around this time frame, although they're saying that it actually went back during the war, but the point being is that you have that, and then following that incident, we have the creation of the military-industrial complex, we have the creation of the Joint Chief of Staff, we have the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency out of OSI, you have the creation of the National Security Agency, and basically a separation, if you will, within America between the military-industrial complex, which has a lot of these former Nazi scientists in it, and the American government. You have the kind of the birth of the corporatocracy at that point, where they're able to take these projects, get funding through the government, but then hide what they're doing under intellectual property and other various ways to circumvent constitutional or government oversight. Now, and if we remember, Wernher von Braun was one of these Nazi scientists who ended up being the father of our rocket program of NASA. Carol Rosin spoke about this. You can, I think it's Carolrosin. You can YouTube her. She had worked under Rosin under von Braun. And before he died, or at some point, he apparently said to her, look, the last card they're going to play is going to try to be a world alien invasion to try to pull everybody together. This goes into why I said, be careful in my last video, be careful the business model that is sold with the alien invasion talk, right? Just be careful of that. Because it seems every time they attempt to sell us something, it always ends up being something that also takes away, we're selling our our sovereignty. We're selling our human rights. So you have, so also, now the CIA, of course, roots with the Thule Society and the Occultist in the Nazi Party, the scientists and all these people that came over. You also have the intelligence agencies, all of the intelligence agencies having their roots going back to John Dee. John Dee being the original 007, it's the character that Gandalf is made from, I guess it was what was said, going back into the 1590s, Queen Elizabeth's court, who was the one that was said to be channeling all these different beings, had developed the Enochian alphabet, the Enochian magical system that is still in practice today, was used by Aleister Crowley in his words to open portals in Egypt. This is all documented. This isn't conspiracy or speculation. They actually have John Dee's diary of his angel communications, him and Edward Kelly. John Dee was said to have also had close ties with a gentleman named Sir Francis Bacon. If you don't know who Sir Francis Bacon is, I have one of his books right here, his early books, selected writings. He was a Rosicrucian, secret society. He was also the head of the I think the Grand Lodge in London that all Masons are reportedly to have owe their allegiance to, and the whole point was to have an intellectual renaissance on the planet, to educate people, because they understood that you could only have a free society. You could only have a free society equivalent to the level of education of the people. Otherwise, they're going to be led astray. This is why I keep talking about this, in particular in my last video. But interesting enough, in Sir Francis Bacon's book, he talks about the New Atlantis. It's a short story in here. He also talks about their view of God being that Old Testament God. And something people don't realize is that while John Dee and a lot of these secret society guys, they were occultists, they were channeling things, they were this, they're that, they were very devout. It would appear by their writings, Old Testament oriented, fear of God's wrath, punishment type folks. But also felt then that what they were doing was, of course, for the greater good. Now, going back to the New Atlantis is discussed in this book. It's interesting that in the New Age right now, in particular in a lot of the groups, one of the groups in particular I was involved with, the Hertox Keys of Enoch, they discussed the New Atlantis. It's one of the prophecies in the book. They call it the Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch. Enoch, of course, Enochian magic, going back through the intelligence agencies, back to John Dee. They were all about science. The individual that wrote it is a physics individual. And here's the thing, I'm not saying they are bad, good, I'm just telling you facts. I had some questions with some of the things that they were doing, and the moment I started asking questions, all of a sudden I was persona non grata by those individuals, which of course then made me go, because I am one of those individuals, let's all sit down and talk about it. What does truth have to fear? And no one has to fear truth other than those who fear their shadow being cast off. Now, the New Atlantis stuff is very heavily tied into the New Age material of all different types. And within the New Age, too, you also have individuals that are tied in, whether it be Richard, what's his name? The Sirius guy. I'll think of it in a minute. You have individuals tied to the Stanford Research Institute. The Stanford Research Institute was an institute that had many, many Central Intelligence Agency programs being funded out of it, in particular with remote viewing, the Army Psychic Spy Program, which was ran by an OT Level 7, from my understanding, initiate of Scientology. And of course, Scientology being founded by L. Ron Hubbard, who was naval intelligence and happened to be buddies at the time with Jack Parsons, who ended up going on to formulate the JPL laboratories, and both were buddies with Aleister Crowley, who was named the most wicked man on the earth, or the planet, or whatever it was that they gave him. But the point being, it's all tied together. It's all very incestuous within the occult, the intelligence agencies, the Nazi mindset, how the Nazi mindset is able to take entire countries of people and bring about such darkness in them to get them to exterminate their fellow human being without any thought, thinking that they're righteous. And I'm not saying that all of these people are in on it. Let me be clear with this, because there are very good people in it, very good people in the New Age. However, the leaders, and what I have found in the way in which the government is exploiting the people in the New Age, and some of the leaders in the New Age, and some of the spirits associated with, not so much. And what happened, what I see in the New Age, was the presentation of the UFO stuff, the UFO disclosure stuff, as well as the old age of the First Nation indigenous teachings of this planet that we at all one time were a part of, being on this planet, being human, sharing this DNA that can exist within the vibrational frequency of the Earth's electromagnetic field as part of the Earth's children, right? And so you have the co-opting of the old age, which is a lot of the indigenous teaching going under the name of the New Age. You have the UFO stuff coming out that's affiliated with all of this, which could be everything from portals to technology. When we discuss this, we have all of these scientists that are experts at psychological manipulation, experts at or learning to be experts on biological experimentation on people, on all the weird stuff that they do. Now, how am I going to tie this all together? Well, remember the war in Ukraine launched when? It launched at the exact moment that the trucker protests in Ottawa and Canada were getting global attention and support. The criminality of the vaccine mandates was being pushed back against and exposed. You had global support for them, and these protesters were like, you know, they'd set up bouncy houses for the kids. We're having barbecue. You had people from all over, including First Nation, all coming together going, hey, no, we're standing against this. This is wrong. And then what did Justin Trudeau do, who happens to be a disciple of Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum? He criminalized them under the Emergencies Act, and they went in and shut down all payments that were going to support the truckers globally. Turning off all the electronic payments, which is why, by the way, guys, that was kind of a foreshadowing of how they're able to weaponize digital currency against us. All they got to do is flip a switch and you're not able to buy anything. This is what's being beta tested and ran in China against, that's what's suppressing our Chinese brothers and sisters. The CCP has implemented, along with the transglobal corporations who are not loyal to any nations but to themselves under the World Economic Forum as globalists. It's the same things that they're trying to market in these 15-minute cities, in these digital cities, in the freedom cities. if you will, where everything's going to be monitored and everything's going to be uber convenient and so wonderful with all the new technologies, but they're not telling you that these technologies can then be used against you. It is a virtual prison. It's a digital dictatorship, as I've spoken about this before, right? It's the digital dictatorship that the World Economic Forum spoke of. So you had the whole world coming together against this, and then all of a sudden, boom, Ukraine gets attacked by Putin. Well, most people seem to forget that Ukraine was one of the world's, it had the heaviest population in the world, in a Western world, if you will, or nation, or however you want to define it, that was vaccine hesitant. They were pushing against the vaccine hard. Notice after the invasion, after everything's happened, you have Putin using the narrative that we're going against LGBTQIA, we're going against the satanic West, blah, 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 appealing to those people who have been psychologically targeted in our nation to align with Putin, not looking at the psychological reasons why this is happening. I've talked about this in depth. I'm not going to go into it again. But they were using that as an excuse, religion as a tool. And in that moment, you had the entire world's focus get turned away. And so in the process now, you have Ukraine being cold. You have the same criminals in power that will still be in power. You have, it's like the two sides, good cop, bad cop, but they're on the same team, distracting, redirecting everybody's focus away from the criminality of the vaccine mandates and how that's tied to the vaccine passports, how that's tied to the World Economic Forum's digital dictatorship. And they've even just said now, apparently, the way to bypass that is they're saying in Europe, they're going to require a visa for many countries to visit, one of them being America. So it's not as simple as going on a passport anymore. So they're just learning ways to circumvent the whole pushback against that, but it's going to be re-implemented. It'll just be given, they just need time. But the point being is that it's all tied together with the globalist agenda to tag us, to be able to track us, and control our every single step. And if we get out of line, then they can just simply, if they get everybody in electric cars, they just shut down your ability to recharge your vehicle and drive anywhere, to go anywhere and protest. They can shut down your money and nobody can even help you out from a distance because they'll just shut down your account. The point is that all of this is about centralization of power in the hands of the globalist elite. It's in the hands of the globalist elite. And now we have and with the Russia situation, I've gone back and forth with this because I see Putin as so intelligent. I can't see him being played. However, I also understand that these individuals at the top, they are very good at being able to steer us, and in particular with social media and everything today, they're able to create a digital psychological dossier on everybody. They know your triggers, they know your fears, you know your hates, you know your this, that, and they can set things up accordingly. And so it would not surprise me if Putin was used, if he was used in a way to divide and thin out any potential future opposition to the World Economic Forum's complete authoritarian control over Russia, while at the same time, getting rid of the Ukraine resistance and making sure that overall the same puppet masters will still be in charge. Or someone that they are going to put in that will be more easily controlled or more loyal to them. Don't know. Could go either way, but what I can see is that the actions done so far are on whether it be Putin, whether it be the globe, whoever it may be, Biden, Trump, all of them are serving to divide and conquer, in particular in America, which is serving the globalist agenda. And if you look at what they've done in Kazakhstan, which was a former Soviet, satellite. Most people don't realize how many millions of people were in the Soviet Union prior to its fall. And that was done on purpose, the way that it was. You have the Sunni majority Kazakhstan now holding the One World Religious Summit, that you had everybody from Catholics to Mormons to Islam to Buddha. You had everybody there. Interesting enough, they seem to leave out a lot of the First Nation people or indigenous. But that being said, they're all gathering there. You have, I think it's in Dubai, they're building the One World Religion Center, where it's a synagogue, a mosque, and a temple, Christian temple or something like that, all in one area. You have the BRICS being formed as alternative to the dollar, and they're acting like, oh, they're taking out the dollar because, well, the dollar has a natural rise and fall. If you look at the way fractional banking is set up, it is set up to eventually drain as much money out of the people in energy, I talked about the other day, and then eventually collapse. So this is a natural cycle it's going through that they're trying to take credit for as fighting against the evil globalist, which is BRICS, saying that they're fighting against the evil globalists, when in fact the World Bank, they're tied to the World Economic Forum. They're just shifting power. And they're shifting their ability to control by extraction of our energy through currency or their currency. They're switching it over to a more digitalized platform. And it doesn't matter if each nation does its own digitalized platform and central bank of sorts, because at that point, well, the best hackers and the World Economic Forum can do whatever they want and manipulate the internal currencies and affect all of us. So, with that, I'm going to leave it there. I'm just throwing out some of the dots I've seen. I put together some questions, some possibilities, some potentialities. And see, what does it get you to look at? What does it get you to think about? What do you know that I don't, that you can throw in there, interject, and kind of we can come together to a mutual understanding? I just find it interesting that, the same playbook that they have used is being used on us in America, in the world, throughout everywhere, right? And it's why I say be careful of those leaders, in particular those that are going to do what they can to invoke the idea of pride, prejudice, rage, wrath, vengeance, and these things, right? And are very callous and dismissive, and because it has historically been used against people, and it is being used against people again. There's no question. And they put people in charge, like I said, like a President Trump or a Biden or these people or Hillary, that are so extremely divisive, that are so indignant, unprofessional, crass, crude, rude, to appeal to that side of the individual that feels like they haven't been heard and go, yeah, they're speaking for me, but not realizing that while this person is coming in and absolutely sharing certain truths and going and they are going, hey, we're against what's going on with the child trafficking or what's going on with the border insecurity or what's going on with this or that, whatever it may be. It's being done so in such a way, it's called co-opting, so that the other side that needs to be reached never, ever, ever will ever be able to be reached because of the individual. And by not uniting as Americans and going, well, liberal, Democrat, blah, 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 I would just like to remind everybody that this is being done on both sides of the aisle. And the only people that's going to serve in the end are all the corrupt politicians who would be left in power, who are in line with all of the World Economic Forum folks. And all the opposition would eventually be weeded out, moved out. Like, or going against each other in a divide and conquer campaign. It's like, you know, if I have a nation that I want to take out, well, that's why you divide and conquer. They know this. They know this. This is what they're doing. And if you look at Yuri Bezmenov and his talk back in 1984, but the KGB defector, who, you know, he openly said, yeah, we've co-opted your institutions for a very long time, because they understood if you could grasp the mind of the children, then you have that mind of the adult. And they're blaming all of the corruption in the world that happens in the name of America on Americans and our Constitution, not the globalists that have overtaken our nation and are not following the Constitution. But if they can convince the left, oh, that document is so racist, you need a trigger warning on it at the National Archives, and oh, we need to overthrow it, we need to this, we need to that, do away with constitutional rights in the name of the greater good, human rights in the name of the greater good, oh, that's the seed of every communist, tyrannical dictatorship that's ever been on the planet. And on one side they're doing it in the name of religion, and on the other side they're doing it in the name of fighting against religion. And then a whole bunch of us in the middle that are like, woo, hold on, wait a minute. Like, I don't agree with that, 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 hold on. Let's just slow down, communicate, educate, see what we can agree on, and let's unite as Americans first. Because remember, the Americas combined, North America, Central America, South America, if we go back to First Nation teachings, these were the lands of the world. It was going to be the cornerstone on the planet. That was going to be that which healed these thousands of years of generational trauma of people on the planet, and begin to slowly change things for the better and truly be the light of the world. To truly go, okay guys, we can have self-governance. We do not need a theocracy, a corporatocracy, an aristocracy above us, a dictatorship controlling our everything. If we have a healed and educated and loving populace, we can self-govern. We do not need masters over us. And that's why these continents have been under such massive, massive attack. And they're doing what they can to get us to turn against each other and to divide and conquer, so that and all the psyops they're throwing at us in order to make LGBTQIA something that it's really not, that being gay really isn't, what women's rights really, what's happening with all the lewd behavior and all of it. How they want to use this propaganda to go, see, that's why you can't have those rights. That's why we're under attack. That being said, the destiny is in our hands. It just takes being able to listen to one another, do what we can to heal the self, do the shadow work, as it said, right? And unite, and say enough. You know, be the change, create the alternative. So this is just some things I've thrown out there, guys. Anything you have to offer, please let me know. Anything extra you have to throw in, please let me know. I'm always open to learn. So much love.